again, everybody. Welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker, but maybe not today. We have some astonishing news. Now, we've covered lots of topics concerning Catholicism, Christianity, wherever you want to, whatever semantics you want to use. But the numbers that are coming out, as you can see from the screen here, and the total switch in how society in America and in the Western world have gone are astonishing. Christianity is growing in the United States, more specifically Catholicism, at a ramping rate, which is concerning for the left and for Democrats and for progressives, because, of course, they don't want this to happen. They want a secular, agnostic, godless country, which, of course, leads to hell. But it's not working. The COVID scam that happened 5 years ago, the diversity bullshit, this transgender stuff, the force feeding of interracial marriages, the force feeding of pornography in schools and on the internet have backfired as of right now. Christianity is growing at a mind-blowing pace in the United States and in the Western world because, as it always happens, as they say in the casino business, the worm always turns. And things aren't status quo all the time. And when things are bad, when things are unnatural, they have to go back to nature. Life, God, always finds a way. And if you would have told me that it would have been this particular generation, Gen Z, that is leading the forefront for this, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have seriously thought it had to be a Gen X or the millennials are finished. But I thought it would have to be my generation that would have to lead the charge. But no. The Gen Zers are not waiting for my generation. Thank sweet baby Jesus for that. Because they are going to church at record paces. They're going to Bible studies at record numbers. They're going to community events. They're going to youth groups. Because they know, they see with their eyes that things are fucked up in this world. And it's not going to get better unless you bring God into it. These numbers are just incredible. They're so encouraging. It took my breath away when I saw this report today. And young men, and it's young men that are leading this religious resurgence. The Christianity making its comeback is the most important thing that is happening right now in the world. After decades-long decline, has finally stalled, shaping the future of Gen Z, the drivers of this religious revival. Political scientist from Eastern Illinois, Ray Burge, was quoted as saying, "We've seen the plateau of non-religion in America. Gen Z is not that much less religious than their parents, and that's a big deal." A Pew data shows that for decades, each age group has been less Christian than the age group before. Americans before the 1970s, Americans born before the 1970s were 63% Christian. 80% of babies were in the 1980s, I should say, were born 53% Christian. And in the 1990s, babies were 46% Christian. But there was no real decline from the 1990s into the 2000s. And Americans born in the 2000s were also 46% Christian. Now, here's the stunning fact. Gen Zers, especially Gen Z men, are more likely to attend weekly services than millennials and even younger Gen Xers. These young men are leading America into its religious, most importantly, Christian, most importantly, Catholic resurgence. Without older generations, there's a constant gender gap amongst Christians, with women more likely to be religious than men. Within Gen Z, the gap has closed, as young men have been joining the church and young women have been leaving it. If current trajectories stick, the gender gap will flip. And what does that mean? That means we could be in for a very rough go. We could actually see birth rates drop into negatives, because feminism has gripped and brainwashed women and young girls to the point where they believe that they are men now. And we might see the most horrible thing happen, and where we might see mixed babies coming in, more mixed babies than ever before, which would be an absolute disaster. An absolute disaster for Western civilization. But these white women, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, that white women have always been the cancer of Western civilization. They were, until 60, 70 years ago, under control. Now they're not under control anymore. They're out of their fucking minds. And many young people have turned to religion to find community, connection, after years of being isolated, especially those years, especially that time during the pandemic, which hit Gen Z harder than most. Now, in some ways, this trend mirrors men shifting to a political right. Religion is coded right, and coded more traditional for young people. That's what they want. That's what they want. Plus, for some of these young men, Christianity is seen as the one institution that isn't initially and formally skeptical of them as a class. It doesn't matter how much money you have, or if you even own property, the Catholic Church will take you. These other protesting churches, let me tell you something, they're all about money. All of them. You see these pastors with these Rolexes, some of these guys have fucking airplanes. If you can't pay to be in that church, they don't want you. And that's the beauty of this whole thing about Catholicism. Now, we talk about, oh, well, look at all the gold in the Catholic Church and all that other stuff. That stuff was donated by people who wanted to follow in St. Francis of Assisi's and Jesus' teaching of, if you follow me, give away all your possessions. And they gave them away to the church. Now, listen, I'm not going to tell you that the Catholic Church is, as an institution, is 100% fucking, innocent here. I mean, they like their free tax base and all that other good stuff. But they're the only one true institution. All these other ones are insane. I mean, what are you going to do? Turn to Islam, a false religion that tells you can rape young girls, blow people up, murder people who don't agree with you? You certainly don't want to turn to Judaism, because that's a dead religion. Jesus destroyed most Messianic law, proved it with the Messiah coming. It's only about the Catholic Church. It only is. It's Jesus' church. In France, they realize this now. The Catholic Church has baptized more than 17,000 people, its highest rate in number of entrants in over 20 years. The share of British people between the ages of 18 to 24 who have attended church in the last month has jumped from 4% in 2018 to 16% today, including 21% gain among young men who are also entering Bible societies and community groups. This is an incredible, incredible moment in time. But unfortunately, there is a danger because as men are entering the church, women are leaving the church, especially these young girls. They would rather tattoo themselves, pierce their faces, and whore around with anything and everything and have babies indiscriminately with anybody they want, mostly with non-white people. So there now we have single white mothers out there with black children or Mexican children, whatever, Indian, I don't know. And they're now turning into what black and Hispanic women have been, daughters of the government. And a lot of these white women will go on the internet and they will shame other white men for not being man enough to step up to the plate to raise their black child. Don't fall for it. Do not fall for this. There will be a time, there will be a time where white women will come back. They have to. I never thought that young white men would come back. I thought in 2017 it was over for the church, with all these scandals and all this stuff going around, and look what the pandemic did. Sometimes, as they say, you need horror to see the glory, and that's exactly what happened with that pandemic. The globalist society tried to isolate white Christian heterosexual males into keeping them in the house, keeping them in the basement, giving them pornography for free on the computer, giving them gambling sites so they can waste their money on that, feeding them marijuana, feeding them terrible food so they get fat, encouraging them not to groom so they have beards down to their belly buttons, encouraging them not to dress properly, not to carry themselves like men do or men used to. And they encourage this, the media, the globalist society, with commercials depicting white men as morons, advertisements of black men and white women having a great grand old time, movies depicting black women as leaders and saving the world. And these Gen Zers have seen that it's all nonsense. They've seen it. And here's the proof right here. This was from Fox News today. Christian revival across the U.S. Annual Bible sales have gone up 41% over the last 3 years. Religion and spiritual app downloads up 79.5% over since 2019, and contemporary Christian music, which is that, Jesus rock, 50% streaming service over streaming services since 2019. Let's see what Fox has to say.
A Christian revival across the country. Bible sales increasing over 40% since 2022. Religion app downloads surging nearly 80%. That increase since 2019. And Christian music Spotify streams up 50% from 2019. Our next, a Christian revival across the country.
Now, you may say that those are just numbers. And you may say that those are just, stats. It's more than that. It's more than that. There's no lying in numbers. And if these numbers continue to increase, it's going to be trouble. And the scary part about Gen Z, not for me or you, but for Israelis and Jews who are AIPAC and all this other stuff, and the Islamics, is that this generation doesn't want to go to war anymore for Israel or for anybody else. And they're voting. They're a major voting bloc. So if they're going to be a Christian voting bloc, a Catholic voting bloc, which has to increase, And they're seeing all these other bullshit Protestant religions, protesting religions, who are just war hawk Israel simps, who are going to send them to die so they can get money from these donors, these Jewish donors. They're going to reject it. And they're not going to vote for any politician who says, I'm for smaller government, lower taxes, and I support Israel. Once that politician says that, they pretty much just ended their campaign. Because these kids today are not going to deal with that. The first question you should ask in a town hall when you see a politician is, do you support Israel? If they say yes, leave. Walk right the fuck out. And believe me, people will follow, because nobody wants to see their sons or daughters die in war for these people anymore. This is the Christian Catholic backlash to all these neocon wars and all the garbage that has been spewed over the last 50, 60 years by these horrible agents of Satan. Now, we mentioned that there is a gap. And the only concern that we have here is the deepening gender divide within America's religious revival. And it could have broader consequences for young people. Why? Well, people like to marry people like them. And women are increasingly becoming liberal and increasingly becoming non-religious, while men are the opposite. They're becoming more traditional, more conservative, and increasingly more religious. Partnering is going to be a problem. And if there's no partnering, there's no babies being made. Well, we need marriages. When we say partnering, I mean marriage. If there's no marriages, there's no babies being made, and that could lead to a horror show for white women. For white women, not for white men. White women need to be shown the way. They have to be led. When they are not led, they are lost in the wilderness. And it has to be done by their fathers. It has to be done by their brothers. It has to be done by uncles, by anybody. And they have to be brought back to the rightful church. Somebody once told me that Protestants, and when I talk about protesting religions, I'm talking about all the evangelicals and Protestant nationalists and all that other shit, that Protestants, they read the menu, but they don't eat the meal. Meaning that they read the scripture, but they don't know God. They've replaced God with scripture. They can Bible thump you to death. They know every verse, every saying, all of it. They know it all. They don't know God. What's the point? We have to come back to the one true church, and we have to somehow guide women into this, because they're lost. They're sick. They can't do this on their own. And if they're in their 20s and 30s, they will turn to other lost people and they will couple with them. And then this country will be in big trouble. But you have to stay the course. And Gen Z boys, men, young men, you are on the right course. God bless you. You've done the right thing. It's how nature works. It's a natural order of things. It's God, Jesus, man, woman, child. That's it. That's the way it is. That's the way it's always been, and it's worked for thousands of years. Now, of course, feminism has brainwashed these women into thinking that, no, it shouldn't work. And look where they are now. They're on the losing side. Unfortunately, they're too stupid to realize it. Well, there's my 2 cents. All right. So, How do we leave you? Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, my friends, Satan is always busy, and he's pissed off today. This is not good for him. He's not a happy cat right now. Be a man, have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And remember, if it ends in an ism, it's a mental disorder. We'll see you later.